Alright, this is round 2 at Free Thinker, where I believe he's making the same mistake as in the first video. I will show you why again. Alright, let's hit it.
Crazy, the fact that you lay on this forced argument, the fact that you keep plugging this in, that it doesn't say forced, doesn't mean it wasn't. These women were not given a choice. They didn't walk into the home after they took the wife, the son, and the father out and killed them and say, "Would you like to come with me and be my husband?" They were not given a choice. This was forced. There's no doubt about this. You can't claim that there's no force here when they were taken.
You're still plugging in fill in the blank, and I will show you exactly what I mean. The author is very clear. For example, if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. This is force. This is rape. You cannot plug force and rape where it is not. In that culture, many women thought differently about being alone, and the women were perfectly aware of such a situation in that particular culture. Therefore, in that particular culture, things were different. In today's culture, if I killed a woman's husband, she most likely will not want to sleep with me. However, what women do in today's culture has no bearing on theirs. Would you like to know how women acted back in those days? Let me show you an example. Genesis 18 and 12, where it says, "Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" Here Sarah calls Abraham her Lord. It's also translated as her master, but this is the KJV, and we're going to go with her Lord. So, do you know any women, any wives that are going to call their husband her Lord in today's time? I think my wife would be like, "Nigga." Okay? That's just one example of how women acted back then. You will not find any females that are going to call their husbands Lord, if any at all, in today's time. It's different. This is how they thought different.
It's evident by a lot of kidnapping victims. They will pretty much do anything their captors want. See the Elizabeth Smart case.
You're again mixing two different cultures. Let me further show you how women were different back in those days. You say today's time, they would pretty much do what the captor wanted. Well, that's not the case for these women. Let's take a look. Deuteronomy 22, 24 through 27. See, in 24, the damsel cried not. That's because it was consensual. In 27, or actually 25 to 27, where the man forced her, that's right here, and the man forced her and lie with her, which was rape, guess what it says in 27? "For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her." These women back in this time cried. Even though they were being raped, cried when it was not consensual. In these times, today's times, an attacker would say, "You cry, I'm going to kill you." In those times, they cried anyway, because they knew it was evil, and if they were doing the holy laws like they were supposed to be, then they were going to be in paradise anyway. So there was no losing out. So let's continue. So addressing your next point on kidnapping is going to be quite easy. Once again, the women in those times would have cried. If they didn't want to be taken away, they didn't want to be forced to do something, they would have cried out to somebody to come and save her. But then again, that had to do with rape, and this is taking a woman, not having sex with her. So the next point you make is on brainwash, and this is not the case, obviously, because they would have cried if they did not want to be, if it was not consensual. So those 2 points are moot. And then we have this.
And usually the women were about 13, by the way. So not only is this rape, but statutory rape.
So you mean to tell me you're going to compare the marriage laws of today, which are about 18, but in some states, if she's about 17, the parents can consent to her marrying somebody over the age of 18. You're going to compare that to ancient laws where it was legal to marry at an age such as 13 and call it statutory rape. Freethinker, you know better than that. The laws back then did not prohibit them from marrying at that age. You're trying to, this whole video you're making, you're trying to compare today's time with back in those times, and the comparison is moot, and obviously moot. The laws were not prohibiting people from marrying at the age of 13 back then. So that wasn't even a good point for you to bring up, and then you label it rape again. Again, once I will say again, if it were rape, they would scream. They would not be just taking it, and they would just scream so that somebody could come and help them if it were not consensual. I can't stress that enough.
You cannot look at the Americans of the 16th, 17th, and 1800s and say, well, they took slaves, but remember, this was a different time. It does not excuse the act of slavery.
Freethinker, if you don't know the difference between the two, then I don't know what to say. Let me help you out a little bit, quick, fast, and in a hurry. The American slavery. Americans, those slaves were beaten. They were killed. If they ran away, they were chased after, brought back, and whipped. Their body parts were damaged. They were forced into their labor. They got nothing in return. Biblical slavery was chosen. People needed a place to stay. They needed supplies. They needed this and that. They became slaves. They needed money. They got rich off of their masters, in fact. They sold themselves. If you so much as damaged a slave's tooth, you had to let the slave go. If you so much as damaged the slave's eye, you had to let the slave go. If the slave ran away because he feels he was being mistreated, you could not go after him, and you would have to let the slave dwell in the land with you without being oppressed, and so on and so forth. You trying to compare the two is logically fallacious. So I can't even explain why you would even try to compare those two. Moving on. Next, you just pretty much repeat what you said in the first video. You say these women were in no way happy. You say that they were unwilling participants, so on and so forth, but you don't know that. I will again state that you would have to be in the minds of these women to know if they were happy or not. The Bible did not state they were unhappy. It did not state they were happy. You don't know their mood. You're making a baseless assertion. You're assuming that these women are unhappy based off of what you would feel. And you cannot do that, because you would say that a female would probably cooperate with the rapist. Well, in these times, a female did not cooperate, and they screamed. And then you try to apply the situation and ask what I would feel. It's invalid. The same thing I would tell you about ancient Greece. How would you feel if you were a male there, a young boy, and an older man slept with you? You would be utterly disgusted right now, but if you lived in those times, you would be alright with it, because that's what they did and that's how they were raised. In ancient Greece, they slept with young boys. So the comparison is invalid with this example that I just given you. When I was talking about rape equaling fornication and lust, I was not talking about marriage making rape not rape. What I said is that rape equals lust and fornication. You do not rape somebody out of love, therefore you rape them out of lust. And the Bible is clearly against this. So it would not allow, the laws would not allow them to lust after females. They would have to offer up a burnt sacrifice, or they would probably, and of course in rape, they would be stoned to death. You can say this is rape throughout the entire video, but the fact of the matter is this is not rape, and the evidence is clear. This is not rape. This is based off of your emotional argument of fill in the blank. And you can't do that.